The shuttle bay of the GSS Harmony buzzed with nervous energy as 27 different species mingled in what could only be described as organized panic. I, Kefanel of the Theshan Collective, watched from my observation perch as the newest batch of Academy cadets filed through the docking bay. Most were exactly what you'd expect from civilized worlds, properly groomed, adequately frightened, and sporting the kind of pale complexions that screamed, "I have never seen actual sunlight without protective filters." Then there was her. The human shuffled in near the back of the group, and honestly, she looked like she'd been dragged backwards through a quantum storm. Her uniform was regulation, sure, but it hung on her frame like she'd borrowed it from someone 3 sizes larger. Her hair was pulled back in what humans call a ponytail, those several strands had escaped to frame a face that looked perpetually annoyed at the universe's general existence. "Great," I muttered to my aide, Plix 7, another soft-worlder who thinks she's tough because she watched too many action vids. Plix 7's tentacles twitched in what passed for amusement among his species. "Should we place bets on how long she lasts?" Before I could answer, the human did something that made my primary heart skip a beat. A Korvan Battle-Beetle, all 2 meters of armored intimidation, accidentally bumped into her while showing off for some pretty Altarian females. The beetle's natural response was to rear up and display its combat spines, a threat gesture that had sent 3 other cadets scurrying for cover just that morning. The human looked up at the towering insectoid, blinked once, and said with the kind of deadpan delivery that could freeze plasma, "Wow, compensating much." The Battle-Beetle froze. The entire shuttle bay went quiet. Even the ambient hum of the life support systems seemed to dial down a notch, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Then the human stepped around the stunned beetle like he was a piece of inconvenient furniture and continued toward the registration desk. "By the 7 moons of Thesha," I whispered, "what kind of Deathworld breeds creatures with that much audacity?" The answer, as I would learn over the following weeks, was Earth. Terra. Soltwa, the planet that the Galactic Council had marked with 17 different warning classifications and a simple note that read, "Approach with extreme caution. Inhabitants may be hazardous to galactic peace of mind." Her name was Riley Knox, and she was about to turn our understanding of the universe inside out, backwards, and possibly into several dimensions we hadn't discovered yet. The first real hint that she was different came during orientation week. Commander Velthon, a distinguished Zenthari officer with enough battle scars to tell 1,000 war stories, was giving his standard "Welcome to Hell" speech to the new recruits. "You are no longer the apex predators of your home worlds," he rumbled in that way that had made countless cadets wet themselves over the years. "Here, you are prey. Weak, soft, food for the real hunters of the galaxy." Most cadets were doing that thing where they try to shrink into their uniforms and become invisible. A few were openly weeping. The Korvan Battle-Beetle from the shuttle bay was clicking his mandibles in what I recognized as barely controlled terror. Riley Knox was cleaning her fingernails. "Cadet Knox." Commander Velthon's voice could have shattered titanium. "Are we boring you?" She looked up with the expression of someone who'd been interrupted while contemplating whether to have toast or cereal for breakfast. Not boring exactly, more like charmingly predictable. The temperature in the room dropped approximately 15 degrees. Commander Velthon's crest flared to full intimidation display, his 6 arms flexing to show off muscles that could crush a shuttlecraft. "Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate just how predictable I am, Cadet." Riley stood up, all 5'0" of her, and regarded the towering alien with the kind of casual interest usually reserved for mildly interesting weather patterns. "Sure, you're going to tell us about the time you single-handedly held off a Krex raiding party at the Battle of Mendoz 7. You will mention the 43 enemy ships you personally destroyed, the commendation from the High Admiral, and how it taught you that survival requires both strength and cunning." The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a photon drop. Commander Velthon's crest slowly deflated. "How did you? Your service record is public information, Commander. Plus, you have got that little tick where you touch your left shoulder when you are about to tell a war story. Same spot where you took shrapnel during the Mendoz engagement." She sat back down with a shrug. Also, you have given this exact same speech, word for word, to 17 previous cadet classes. The Academy archives are surprisingly detailed. I made a mental note to check if the security protocols around Academy records had been compromised. Then I made another note to never, ever play poker with a human. The real fun started during combat training. The Academy's combat simulation chamber was a marvel of holographic technology capable of recreating any battlefield scenario from across the galaxy. For the cadets' first exercise, Commander Velthon had chosen something simple, a standard Krex boarding scenario. The cadets would face off against holographic projections of the galaxy's most feared pirates in the controlled environment of a damaged cruiser. Most species had developed their own combat doctrines over millennia of warfare. The Thessians relied on superior technology and coordinated strikes. The Zenthari used brute force and overwhelming firepower. The Altarians preferred stealth and precision. Humans, apparently, had developed the combat doctrine of what would be the most psychologically damaging thing I could do right now. The exercise began normally enough. The cadets were split into squads of 5, each tasked with clearing a section of the simulated ship. Riley's squad included a nervous Altarian named Sipkek, 2 Thessian twins who communicated entirely through head nods, and the unfortunate Korvan Battle-Beetle, who was apparently cursed to keep running into her. I watched on the observation deck as their squad encountered their first group of holographic Krex warriors. Standard protocol was to take cover, assess the enemy's position, and engage with coordinated fire. Riley walked straight toward them. Cadet Knox. Commander Velthon's voice crackled through the comm system. "What are you doing?" "Improvising," she called back, and then she started talking to the Krex projections. "Now, you have to understand something about Krex pirates. They are 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating, armed with weapons that can vaporize most known materials, and have never been known to show mercy to any living creature in the galaxy. They also have one significant weakness that most people don't know about. They are really, really superstitious." "Hey there, big guys," Riley said conversationally as she approached the snarling holograms. "Nice ship you've got here. Shame about the curse, though." The lead Krex hologram paused mid-charge. "What curse, human scum?" "Oh, you don't know?" Riley looked genuinely surprised. "This is the GSS Meridian, right? Same class as the Nebula's Hope." Even I knew that reference. The Nebula's Hope was a legendary ghost ship that had disappeared into a black hole 50 years ago, taking its entire crew with it. The Meridian-class cruisers were built using metal salvage from the Hope's sister ship. Riley continued, examining her fingernails again. "The Thessians thought they could purify the cursed alloys, but..." She shrugged. "Well, you know what they say about Thessian engineering." I felt personally attacked by that comment, but I had to admit she was playing this perfectly. The Krex holograms were backing away now, their weapons lowering. Pirates might be vicious, but they weren't stupid. A cursed ship was worse than a dozen enemy fleets. "You are lying, human whelp." The lead Krex snarled, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Am I?" Riley tilted her head. "Tell me, how many of your boarding parties have you lost contact with since you came aboard?" The brilliant thing was, according to the exercise parameters, the Krex had lost contact with 2 other squads. It was part of the scenario design, meant to create tension for the cadets. But Riley was reframing it as evidence of supernatural interference. "The ship takes them, one by one," she whispered, and somehow her voice carried in the artificial atmosphere. "First they report in normally, then the comm signals get weaker. Then they start talking about voices in the walls, shadows moving in the corners of their vision. And then, she snapped her fingers, the sound echoed in the chamber like a gunshot. Half the Krex holograms jumped. Silence. I watched, fascinated, as the most feared pirates in the galaxy were reduced to nervous wrecks by one small human and her talent for creative storytelling. Within 10 minutes, the entire Krex boarding party had retreated to their ships and fled the system. The simulation ended with a confused computer voice announcing, "Exercise terminated. Victory condition achieved through unconventional methodology." Commander Velthon stared at the tactical display and bewilderment. In 30 years of running this simulation, no cadet has ever achieved victory without firing a single shot. Riley stretched and yawned. Honestly, I thought it would be harder. Don't you guys study human psychological warfare tactics? Human what now? I found myself asking. Oh, Sun Tzu, Machiavelli, modern advertising techniques. The art of making your enemy defeat themselves through careful application of paranoia and social manipulation. She looked around at our shocked faces. Wait, you seriously don't know about human psychological warfare? The answer was no. No, we did not. That oversight was about to become a much bigger problem than any of us realized. The incident that really put Riley Knox on the Galactic map happened 3 weeks into her academy training. It was during what should have been a routine planetary survey exercise on Kepler 442b, a tidally locked world that served as a perfect testing ground for cadet survival skills. The day side was a blazing hellscape where the temperature could melt lead. The night side was a frozen wasteland where carbon dioxide fell as snow. The narrow twilight zone between them was supposedly the only habitable area, a thin ring of perpetual sunset where the Academy had established a small research station. The exercise was simple. Each cadet squad had to spend 48 hours on the surface, establish a temporary base camp, and conduct a survey of the local ecosystem. It was meant to be challenging but safe, with emergency extraction available at the first sign of real trouble. What the Academy had failed to mention was that Kepler 442b was also home to a pack of Ravagers. Ravagers are the reason most civilized species avoided Deathworlds entirely. They were apex predators that had evolved on a dozen different high-gravity, high-radiation planets, somehow managing to spread across the galaxy through unknown means. 8 feet tall, built like armored tanks, and possessed of a cunning intelligence that made them nearly impossible to hunt, and they could smell fear from 3 kilometers away. First sign of trouble came when Cadet Squad 7 went silent 12 hours into the exercise. Then Squad 4, then Squad 12. Emergency extraction teams found the camps destroyed, equipment scattered, and no sign of the cadets themselves. The Academy went into full crisis mode. All remaining squads were ordered to shelter in place while the faculty tried to figure out what was happening. Except for one problem. Squad 3, Riley Knox's squad, had gone dark 6 hours before the first attack. Commander Velthon was coordinating the search efforts from the orbital command station when long-range sensors picked up movement in the Twilight Zone. Something big, something fast, something moving with the coordinated precision of a military unit. Sir, reported sensor operator Quilnan, his voice tight with worry. I'm reading approximately 30 large life forms moving toward the research station. Biosignatures are consistent with Ravager pack hunters. 30 Ravagers. The largest pack ever recorded was 12, and that had been enough to destroy an entire colonial settlement. 30 was a small army. Prep the heavy assault shuttles, Commander Velthon ordered. We are going in with full military support. Sir, what about the missing cadets? The commander's crest darkened with grief. 47 young beings, the future of galactic civilization, lost to the most dangerous predators in known space. Mark them as casualties. No one could survive a Ravager pack that size. That's when the comm system crackled to life. Hey, Command, this is Knox. Are you guys going to send down some food or what? We are getting pretty hungry down here. The bridge went dead silent. Commander Velthon stared at the comm unit like it had just started speaking in ancient Theshan poetry. Cadet Knox? Report your status immediately. Oh, we are fine. Bit tired, honestly. Do you have any idea how heavy a Ravager is? Because let me tell you, dragging 30 of them into a pile is not a job for one person. My back is killing me. 30 minutes later, the rescue shuttle landed at coordinates Riley had provided. What they found defied every law of predator behavior, common sense, and basic physics. 30 Ravagers, each one the size of a small shuttle, were arranged in a neat pile near the research station. They weren't dead. Ravagers were notoriously difficult to kill, but they were unconscious, bound with some kind of metallic rope, and making soft whimpering sounds like oversized puppies. Riley Knox sat on top of the pile, dangling her legs and eating what appeared to be military rations. The other missing cadets were scattered around the area, looking dazed but unharmed. "How?" was all Commander Velthon managed to say. Riley swallowed her bite of ration bar and shrugged. "Honestly, I just talked to them." "You talked to them?" "Well, yeah. Turns out Ravagers are pack hunters, right? So they have a complex social hierarchy based on dominance displays and threat assessment. Most species try to fight them or run from them, which just confirms their position as apex predators." She gestured at the pile of unconscious monsters. "But humans? We have got thousands of years of experience dealing with pack hunters. Dogs, wolves, corporate board meetings. Same basic principles. You are telling me you dominated a pack of 30 Ravagers using human social dynamics? God, no. That would have been way too much work." She grinned, and for the first time since I'd known her, Riley Knox looked genuinely pleased with herself. "I convinced them that I was their new pack leader by challenging their alpha to single combat, defeating him through superior tactical thinking and psychological manipulation, and then demonstrating my worthiness by providing food for the entire pack." She pointed to a massive pile of local fauna carcasses near the research station. "Turns out, when you know how to make traps and you're not afraid of a little manual labor, this planet's got plenty of protein just lying around." The Ravagers were actually half-starved. Poor things had been competing with each other for scraps, when they could have been working together to bring down the really big prey. Commander Velthon's voice was barely a whisper. "You defeated the Alpha Ravager in single combat." "Oh no, I played poker with him." Human card game. Involves a lot of bluffing, reading your opponent's tells, and knowing when to fold." She reached in her pocket and pulled out a deck of playing cards. "Turns out Ravagers are terrible at bluffing. They have got about 12 different unconscious gestures that telegraph exactly what they are thinking. After I won his territory rights, his mate, and his favorite hunting spear in the first 3 hands, he pretty much accepted that I was intellectually superior. His hunting spear?" Riley gestured to a massive bone-in metal weapon leaning against the research station. "Apparently, it's been in his family for generations. He was really reluctant to put it up as collateral, but I convinced him it was a matter of honor. Humans are big on honor challenges." I realized I was starting to understand something terrifying about human nature. They didn't just adapt to hostile environments. They convinced the environment to work for them. "What about the other cadets?" Commander Velthon asked weakly. "Oh, they are fine. Bit shocked at first, but they got used to it pretty quickly. Turns out most civilized species have never seen effective leadership in action. Once I explained that we were going to survive through cooperation, resource management, and strategic thinking instead of panicking and getting eaten, they were surprisingly helpful." She hopped down from the pile of unconscious Ravagers and brushed dust off her uniform. "The Altarians are fantastic scouts, by the way. And those Theshan twins? Amazing engineers. They rigged up a whole water purification system using spare equipment and some local minerals. But the Ravagers Dash are taking a nap. I may have slightly overestimated the dosage on the sedatives in their food." She looked sheepish. In my defense, I have never drugged a pack of alien super predators before. There was bound to be a learning curve. The rescue team spent the next hour loading unconscious Ravagers into cargo shuttles. Each one had to be secured with military-grade restraints and monitored by medical teams to ensure they didn't wake up during transport. As we lifted off from Kepler 442b, I found myself staring down at the research station where Riley Knox had turned the most dangerous predators in known space into sleeping puppies through what she casually referred to as basic human social dynamics. "Plix 7, I said to my aide, "I want you to compile every available record on human combat doctrine, social behavior, and planetary adaptation strategies." "All of it, sir." I watched Riley through the shuttle's window as she played some kind of hand-clapping game with a group of Altarian cadets, all of them laughing at jokes I couldn't hear over the engine noise. "All of it. And Plix? Flag it as Priority Alpha." "Priority Alpha, sir? That's reserved for threats to galactic security." I thought about a small human who could convince 30 Ravagers to take a nap, who could make Krex pirates flee in terror through creative storytelling, and who treated the most dangerous situations in the galaxy like mildly interesting puzzles to be solved. Exactly. The Academy never did figure out what to do with Riley Knox. She passed every test, aced every simulation, and generally made the rest of us feel like we'd been playing the game of survival on easy mode our entire lives. But that was just the beginning, because 3 months after the Ravager incident, long-range sensors picked up something that made every civilized species in the galaxy go very, very quiet, a harvester fleet, and they were heading straight for Earth. The harvester fleet appeared on our long-range sensors like a constellation of nightmares. 47 ships, each one the size of a small moon, moving through space with the inexorable certainty of death itself. They had wiped out entire star systems, turning thriving civilizations into empty husks in a matter of days. And they were heading directly for Sol 3, Earth, the Deathworld that had somehow produced Riley Knox. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was, to put it mildly, a complete disaster. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the orbital station above Thesha Prime, and every single one of them had the same brilliant strategic insight. Run away and hope the harvesters got bored. The human homeworld is expendable, declared Ambassador Vrenthok of the Centauri Federation, his 4 eyes blinking in what passed for diplomatic certainty. We evacuate what populations we can and establish a new defensive line at the Rigel system. Agreed, buzzed Ambassador Quillness through her translator. Earth's tactical value is minimal. Better to preserve our core worlds. I sat in the observer section, watching the greatest minds in galactic civilization essentially vote to abandon an entire planet because they were too scared to fight. It was like watching a committee of gazelles decide the best response to a lion was to sacrifice the zebras and hope for the best. That's when Riley Knox walked into the council chamber. She wasn't supposed to be there, of course. Academy cadets don't get invited to emergency sessions of the Galactic Council. But somehow she'd talk her way past security, forge the appropriate credentials, and convince the door guards that she was a special military advisor from the Terran Defense Force. The Terran Defense Force, I should mention, consisted of exactly 12 ships and had never won a battle against anything more dangerous than a malfunctioning cargo drone. "Excuse me," Riley said, her voice cutting through the diplomatic babble like a plasma torch through butter. "Did you just vote to abandon my planet?" The entire chamber went silent. 200 of the galaxy's most powerful beings turned to stare at the small human who had somehow materialized in their midst like a particularly inconvenient ghost. Ambassador Vrenthok recovered first. "Young human, this is a closed session of the Galactic Council. You have no authority to—" "Actually, I do." Riley pulled out a data pad and held it up. According to Galactic Maritime Law, Section 847b, any citizen of a member world has the right to address the Council when that world faces imminent destruction. Earth became a provisional member 3 months ago when we joined the Academy Exchange Program. She was right, of course. It was an obscure piece of legislation that no one had bothered to update in centuries, but it was technically still valid. Trust a human to find the one loophole that mattered. "Very well," said Council Speaker Yithmore, his tentacles writhing with barely contained irritation. "You may speak." Briefly, Riley nodded and walked to the center of the chamber, where she stood surrounded by 200 aliens who could have her vaporized with a thought. She looked about as intimidated as someone deciding what to have for lunch. "Thank you. I will keep this short." She gestured to the tactical display showing the approaching harvester fleet. "You are all planning to run away and let them destroy my world. That's a terrible plan for 3 reasons. Enlighten us," Ambassador Vrenthok said dryly. "First, the harvesters aren't going to stop at Earth. They're going to keep coming until they have consumed every inhabited world in the galaxy. Running away just delays the inevitable while making you look cowardly and incompetent." A few ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. The truth has a way of doing that. Second, you're assuming the harvesters are unbeatable. But nobody's actually tried to fight them using coordinated tactics and superior strategy. You have all just panicked and died. That's not a military defeat. That's a failure of imagination. Now she had their attention. Even the most arrogant species in the galaxy were curious about what a human considered superior strategy. Third, and most importantly, you are making the same mistake everyone makes when they encounter humans. You are assuming we are just another prey species that's going to roll over and die when faced with superior firepower. She smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, Riley Knox looked genuinely dangerous. We are not. The chamber erupted in diplomatic chaos. Ambassadors were shouting, pinnacles were waving, and at least 3 different species were demanding that the human be removed for insulting their military capabilities. Riley waited for the noise to die down, then continued as if nothing had happened. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me operational command of the defense fleet. I'm going to coordinate with Earth's military forces to implement a strategy that the Harvesters have never encountered before. And in 72 hours, we're going to hand them the first real defeat they have experienced in centuries. The silence that followed was so complete, you could have heard a neutrino drop. Ambassador Vrinthok's voice was barely a whisper. A cadet from a backward Deathworld? You expect us to entrust the fate of the galaxy to you? Actually, yes. Riley's tone was perfectly reasonable, as if she were discussing the weather. I have studied the Harvester attack patterns. They rely on overwhelming force, technological superiority, and the assumption that their enemies will panic and make tactical errors. They have never faced an opponent who uses psychological warfare, adaptive strategy, and coordinated deception. And you believe humans possess these capabilities? Riley's grin could have powered a small star. Ambassador, humans invented these capabilities. We have been practicing them on each other for thousands of years. The Harvesters are about to get a crash course in why you don't pick fights with a species that considers war a form of entertainment. I found myself leaning forward in my seat. This was either the most brilliant military strategy in galactic history, or the most spectacular suicide mission ever conceived. What exactly are you proposing? Council Speaker Yith Moore asked carefully. Give me command of the fleet, and I will show you how humans really fight. The vote was surprisingly close. In the end, it came down to simple mathematics. Certain death versus probable death with a slim chance of survival. The galaxy's leadership chose probable death. Riley Knox was granted emergency command of the combined defense fleet, consisting of 847 ships from 43 different species. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. She immediately split it into 17 separate task forces and sent them to different star systems. What are you doing? I demanded, watching from the command center as our entire fleet scattered across the galaxy like startled fish. The Harvesters are approaching Earth. We need to concentrate our forces. No, we need to make them think we are concentrating our forces. Riley was standing in front of a holographic display showing ship movements across 12 sectors. The Harvesters are expecting us to mass our fleet in Earth's system and engage in a traditional battle of attrition. That's exactly what we are not going to do. Then what? We're going to make them paranoid. The plan, as Riley explained it, was beautifully simple in its complexity. The scattered task forces would engage Harvester Scout ships throughout the galaxy, not to destroy them, but to feed them false information. Each encounter would be carefully choreographed to suggest that Earth possessed military capabilities far beyond what the Harvesters had encountered before. The key is making them think we have some kind of super weapon, Riley said, highlighting tactical reports from across the galaxy. Task Force 7 just engaged a Harvester probe near Rigel. They made it look like they were testing some kind of planet-killing weapon, then retreated before the probe could get detailed scans. But we don't have a planet-killing weapon. No, but they don't know that. Meanwhile, Task Force 12 is conducting weapons tests near the Vega system. And Task Force 3 is running stealth maneuvers that make it look like we have cloaking technology. I stared at the tactical display, watching as our forces created the illusion of military superiority through careful deception and strategic misdirection. It was like watching a master magician perform, except the audience consisted of galaxy-consuming monsters, and the stakes were the survival of civilization. This is insane, I breathed. This is human, Riley corrected. We have been doing this to each other for millennia. The art of making your enemy defeat themselves through superior information warfare. The Harvester fleet's response was exactly what she had predicted. Instead of proceeding directly to Earth, they began to slow down, sending additional scout ships to investigate the reports of human superweapons. Their formation spread out, adopting defensive positions designed to counter threats that didn't actually exist. "They are scared," Riley said with deep satisfaction. For the first time in their history, the Harvesters are facing an unknown quantity. They don't know what we are capable of, so they're assuming the worst. But what happens when they realize it's all a bluff? They won't, because we're not going to give them the chance. The real battle began 3 days later, when the Harvester fleet finally reached Earth's solar system. What they found waiting for them was not the desperate last stand they had expected, but something far more terrifying. A perfectly coordinated trap. The human fleet, all 12 ships of it, was positioned in a defensive formation around Earth. They looked pathetically small compared to the massive Harvester vessels, like insects facing down a landslide, which was exactly the point. "All ships, this is Admiral Knox," Riley's voice echoed across the command frequencies. "Execute Operation Checkmate." I watched from the GSS Harmony as the most audacious military strategy in galactic history unfolded before my eyes. The Harvester fleet moved in for what should have been an easy victory. Their massive ships powered up their planet-cracking weapons and prepared to reduce Earth to cosmic dust. That's when the first surprise hit them. The 12 human ships suddenly split apart, each one revealing itself to be not a single vessel, but a cluster of smaller craft held together by magnetic clamps. In seconds, the human fleet went from 12 ships to nearly 200, each one moving with the kind of precision that spoke of months of practice. "Decoy maneuver successful," reported Captain Torres from the TNS Defiance. "Enemy targeting systems are confused. They're trying to lock onto ships that no longer exist." The Harvesters, faced with a suddenly mobile and apparently multiplying enemy fleet, did what any logical military force would do. They adapted their strategy and prepared to engage multiple targets. What they couldn't have anticipated was that the human ships weren't trying to fight them. They were hurting them. "Task Force Alpha, execute drift maneuver," Riley commanded. "Task Force Beta, maintain suppression fire. Task Force Gamma, prepare for slingshot approach." I watched in fascination as the human fleet moved through space like a school of fish, each ship perfectly coordinated with the others. They weren't engaging the Harvesters directly, but rather using their superior mobility to force the massive enemy ships into specific positions. "What are they doing?" I asked Plix 7. "I believe they're implementing what humans call a pincer movement," my aide replied, his tentacles quivering with excitement, "but modified for three-dimensional space combat." The Harvester fleet, responding to the apparent threat, began to close ranks and concentrate their firepower. Their massive ships moved into a defensive formation designed to provide mutual support and overlapping fields of fire, which positioned them exactly where Riley wanted them. "All ships, this is Admiral Knox. Execute final phase. Light them up." The space around Earth suddenly blazed with energy as every human ship simultaneously fired not at the Harvester fleet, but at specific points in space that seemed to contain nothing but empty vacuum. For a moment, nothing happened. The Harvester fleet continued its approach, their weapons charging for the killing blow. Then the mines exploded. Not ordinary mines, but devices that had been carefully positioned throughout the solar system over the past 3 days. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering. A fusion warhead wrapped in a magnetic containment field and designed to create a cascading energy cascade when detonated in sequence. The Harvester fleet found itself caught in a web of intersecting energy fields, each one designed to interfere with their shield systems and disrupt their targeting computers. They weren't taking significant damage, but they were being systematically blinded and confused. "Now," Riley said quietly, "we show them what a Deathworld really looks like." The planet Earth, which had been silent throughout the entire engagement, suddenly came alive. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as orbital stations revealed themselves and opened fire. The moon, which had appeared to be a simple rocky satellite, split open like a flower to reveal the massive railgun that had been constructed inside it over the past month. And from the surface of the planet itself, thousands of small craft lifted off in perfect synchronization. Not military vessels, but civilian shuttles, cargo haulers, and personal transports, all of them modified with weapons and shield systems by a species that had turned warfare into an art form. "My God," I whispered, watching as an entire planet transformed itself into a weapon. They militarized their entire civilization. Not militarized, Riley corrected through the comm system. Motivated. There's a difference. The Harvester fleet, faced with an enemy that had turned every rock, satellite, and civilian craft into a weapon, did something they had never done in their centuries of conquest. They retreated, not a tactical withdrawal, but a full-scale panicked flight. The massive ships that had destroyed entire star systems fled from a single death world, and its inhabitants like children running from a nightmare. All ships. This is Admiral Knox. Riley's voice was calm, professional, and tinged with something that might have been satisfaction. Pursuit is not authorized. Let them go. Let them go. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We have on the run. We could destroy their entire fleet. No, we couldn't. This was never about destroying the Harvesters. It was about making them afraid. I stared at the tactical display, watching as the most feared military force in the galaxy fled from a species they had never encountered before. A species that had turned their entire solar system into a trap and their entire civilization into a military unit. "Fear," I managed to ask. "Fear," Riley confirmed. "The Harvesters are going to go back to whatever hole they crawled out of, and they're going to tell every other hostile species in the galaxy about the humans. About the species that doesn't just fight back, but does it in ways that make no sense and succeed anyway." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried across the command frequencies to every ship in the combined fleet. "The galaxy has spent centuries being afraid of the Harvesters. Now the Harvesters are afraid of us, and word is going to spread. Every hostile species, every would-be conqueror, every cosmic bully is going to hear the same message. Don't mess with the humans. They are completely insane, and they are very, very good at it." The celebration that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. 200 species, united in the knowledge that they had faced annihilation and emerged victorious, through a party that could be seen from 3 star systems away. But I found myself thinking about Riley Knox, the small human who had turned the most dangerous moment in galactic history into a masterclass in psychological warfare and strategic thinking. "Plix 7, I said to my aide as we watched the victory celebrations from the observation deck of the GSS Harmony. "Make a note in my personal log." "Yes, sir." I looked out at the stars, thinking about the humans and their death world, and the way they had turned terror into triumph through nothing more than superior imagination and the willingness to think differently about problems that seemed impossible. Never, ever, under any circumstances, play poker with a human. "Sir, trust me on this one." As the combined fleet prepared to return to their respective homeworlds, I received a personal message from Riley Knox. It was brief, to the point, and perfectly human. "Thank for the vote of confidence, Kefanael. If you ever want to visit Earth, bring sunscreen. And maybe a sense of humor. You're going to need both." I made a mental note to add sense of humor to the list of essential survival equipment for anyone planning to visit a death world. Because if there was one thing I had learned from Riley Knox and her species, it was that humans didn't just survive impossible situations. They made them entertaining. The galaxy would never be the same. And honestly, that was probably a good thing. After all, as Riley had demonstrated, sometimes the best way to deal with an impossible problem is to convince it that you are an even bigger problem. And humans, as I had learned, were very, very good at being problems, the kind of problems that made nightmares wake up screaming.